Meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville, and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City Council performing the housing functions of the former Victorville Redevelopment Agency. First item on our agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the council at this time? All right, seeing no one, we will have our declaration of closed session by our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor McEachran. We have 4 closed session items this evening, 3 of which are existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9A. The case numbers and the parties to the litigation are all set forth on the agenda. The 4th item is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9B3B. We believe and have reason to believe that we are going to be challenged in connection with the prior approval of the reclassification of the property on Palmdale Road and Borrego Road by the KTGY group. There's already a threat of litigation, and there has been challenges to that project, so I want to update you on that. To the extent there's reportable action, we would report it at the commencement of the 7 o'clock meeting.
All right, we'll now move into closed session. Good evening. I'd like to call back to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville, and the City Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, Southern successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the City Council performing the housing functions of the former Victorville Redevelopment Agency. At this time, we'll have any announcements out of closed session.
Thank you, Mayor McEachran. We had 4 closed session items, 3 of which were existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9A. The parties and the case numbers are all set forth on the agenda. The 4th was pursuant to anticipated litigation, Government Code 54956.9B3B, litigation pertaining to a project at the northwest corner of Borrego Road and Palmdale Road. At this time, there is no reportable action with respect to any of those closed session items.
All right, we'll now move into our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation tonight will be led by Reverend Dr. Benjamin Ellis, or Pastor Ben, from the United Methodist Church in Victorville. Pledge of Allegiance by our Victorville Police Department Chief, Don Yoder.
Let us pray. Gracious God, you know that we are hardly a people that are singular. We come from many different trains of thought. We are born of many different colors. We are claimed by many different creeds. and yet we are united. We are united, Lord, in a vision for the future. We pray that your Holy Spirit would surround these chambers, that as they work together, it will be for peace, and it will be by your strength that this community will move into an even brighter new day. We thank you for this place we call home. We pray, Lord, that you would surround us with your presence and your strength. In your holy name we pray. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, every year about this time, we always do this, and this is a presentation in recognition of Fire Prevention Week, and I'd like to have Joe Sicaro come on up. All the great things that the fire department does with respect to fire prevention, inspections, and things like that, we greatly appreciate, and so I'd like to present this proclamation on behalf of the city and city council to you for doing that.
Thank you very much, and as he said, next week is Fire Prevention Week. We celebrate and commemorate the Great Chicago Fire. We celebrate by doing our fire prevention efforts and fire prevention education to the public. Most important thing is to have a working smoke detector, and this year's campaign is no two ways out of whatever building you're in, whatever your house, your workplace, no two ways out.
Thank you, Joe. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, this time we're going to have a special presentation by our Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Sean McGlade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I want to give an extensive report on the street lighting system throughout the city of Victorville, the challenges that we face with financing, the ability to keep the street lights turned on. We've got some options for you, and we're hoping that you're going to give consideration to those options and give staff direction. Before I go any further, I would want to recognize one of the engineering staff that spent many, many hours researching the background and history into the street lighting districts, and there have been various street lighting districts over the years. I'd like to recognize Corey Pruitt for all of her efforts in this. I couldn't have done this without her. In total, the city has, in the order of magnitude, 7,000 street lights. Of that number, 95% are owned, operated, and maintained by the Southern California Edison Company. 40 are owned by the city, 38 by VEMUS, and I've noted there are 324 safety lights. Those are actually the lights that are attached to every traffic signal that you see around the city. Those are a higher intensity street light at 250 watts. So throughout the city there are 106 traffic signals. 81 are owned and maintained by the city, and some of those have, 17 of them have multi-jurisdictional agreements for the maintenance of those traffic signals along with the safety lighting. Those other jurisdictions do share in the cost of that. There are 25 traffic signals that are owned and maintained by Caltrans, but they're also jointly jurisdictional. If you can imagine, along the state highways through Victorville, Highway 18, State Route 395, and the participation of the city is that we pay the energy costs for those traffic signals. There are also parking lot lighting at the 2 park and ride facilities. The one at the Transportation Centre on D Street. There are 32 lights that are owned by the city. We maintain those. The fortunate thing is that both there and the 14 that are at the Amagosa Park and Ride, the maintenance and energy for those is paid from Measure I. At the Amagosa Park and Ride, there is cost sharing with Caltrans on that. The various sources of revenue to pay for all of the other street lights that everybody enjoys throughout the city. We thought it pertinent to give you a little bit of the past history. So back in '77, there was a lighting district formed. There was ad valorem, a portion of the property tax, the ad valorem property tax, was designated for street lighting. And then there was a further assessment district formed in, I think it was 1989. Unfortunately, due to Prop 218, we're just left today with the ad valorem revenues from property tax. And then in more recent years, with all of the new growth, a lot of the new tract subdivisions that were coming in, by condition of approval, we required that they form assessment districts to finance the operation and maintenance of those street lights. So in '77, we've depicted here a map of the original street lighting district. It was just simply a flat rate on parcels. Today, that would probably not withstand a challenge as far as assessment districts are concerned. It was further extended until 2007, but in '97, '98, Prop 218, the amendment to the Constitution, caused the district to go into suspension, in that the district was not formed given the criteria that is now required of Prop 218. Later in '86 it was then that the South Victorville Lighting District was formed, and it too then met the same fate. In '97, '98, the introduction of Prop 218. The difference with the South Victorville one, as compared to the 1977 district, was that there was a methodology associated with the assessments, which was more equitable. The city attorney has indicated that it may be possible to rejuvenate this, but the fact is that the city stopped collecting assessments on this assessment district back in '97, '98, when Prop 218 became law. The ad valorem tax is quite a complicated arrangement, in that the revenues received are calculated by the county based upon assessed values in the area depicted in the map. It is then distributed throughout the city boundary across various tax rate areas, and quite honestly, it's not something that has been explained satisfactorily to us by the county. what we can tell you is that we feel that it's inequitable in that it depends on the tax rate area and how that distribution occurs. The more recent assessment district that has been formed as a result of new development was initially required around 2005, 2006 by conditioning new tracts going through the approval process to form and annex into the Street Lighting Assessment District number 2. The advantages of that were that was set up pursuant to Prop 218. It had the ability to include an inflation factor. The only difficulty is that it doesn't include inflation for administrative costs, but just the energy costs. The assessment per lot per year is around $27, and there are currently 6,665 parcels with that assessment on it. This is really the crunch. The revenues and expenditures for the combination of both the Street Lighting District 1 and 2 looks like this. The survival has been dependent upon the revenue, the reserve funds rather, to the point that we will exhaust those reserve funds this fiscal year sometime. So back in 2008, you can see where that's where everything started to go flat on the revenue side and then started to deplete. And that was the direct result of the assessed values declining significantly. All the while we're faced with energy costs that are ever increasing. And if you look also in that same era of 06 to 09, you can see where the expenditures climbed rapidly. One thing to note is that it's not all attributable to the cost of energy. That's also when a lot of the tracts were, in fact, installing the street lights. They came online, and those Edison bills then started mounting up. As I've mentioned before, the ad valorem tax is directly tied to the assessed values, so the declining assessed values have caused declining revenues. The inequity across the city, where you've got commercial properties that are basically paying nothing for street lighting, and some residents are and some residents are not. It puts an unfair burden on some of the residents. The electricity costs, we've touched on that. The other contributing factor would be that the number of properties that have gone into foreclosure, or people that have not kept their property taxes current, means that the revenue check that we get is sometimes a lot less than anticipated. The hope would be that we would recover those monies later on, but for the current period, it's a deficiency in the revenue.
Sean, that last point there, I don't doubt what's being said there, but I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense at all. How could you not be allowed to at least raise the, based on administrative costs and that hard cost factor? I mean,
we can, remember there's two assessment districts or two sources of revenue. One is an assessment district, and we can recapture those increased energy costs, but it's the ad valorem tax that's tied directly to property tax that is declining where costs are increasing. And that's not something that we can control.
Sean, does that mean that the the assessment districts are covering the admin costs, and the ad valorem covers operation and maintenance?
No, it's not split that way. An assessment district basically has to balance within itself. And later on, we'll get into that a little bit more. There'll be numbers that you will enjoy looking at, I'm sure, Councilman Kennedy. Probably too many numbers. But bottom line is that the latest assessment district can survive within itself. So what our challenge is really just focused on the Streetlight District 1, that is, its revenue source is ad valorem.
And Prop 218 prevents us from what exactly?
For us to be able to get into a solution to this, we need to get a vote of the people, and that's certainly something that is viable if the council decides to go in that direction. That is one of the options that we're proposing. Just to give you a sense of the rising electrical costs, the energy costs, the latest rate approved by the CPUC is 7% for the Edison company. Past rates of 5%, 11%. All of that is contributing to the rising costs of sustaining the street lighting system while the revenues are dropping. Just in 5 years, from 2006 to 2011, the costs to the districts increased by 75%, and that was a combination of energy cost and the fact that there were many of the street lights that were added to the system during the housing boom. And just visually, this is the historic street lighting district energy costs, and again you can see that rapid increase between 2006 and 2011. Currently, we're over $1 million a year in Edison bills for the street lighting system. The total expenditures are comprised of, at the present time, 98% of the total budget is just for those Edison bills. The admin costs, we have trimmed them down as far as we can go, and it's down to that 2% number. This is hopefully something that will help distinguish between the two districts. As I was saying earlier, the one in the middle is the number 2 district. And just looking at the past fiscal year and the current fiscal year budget, you can see that it is sustaining itself. The bills associated with that can be paid for from the assessments collected after the rate increase. As I said earlier, it's about $27. So there's no impact to the overall picture from that alone. It's all attributable to the one on the bottom, which is the street lighting district number 1, the ad valorem tax. And as you can see, there is, we're upside down by $500,000 last year and $600,000 this current fiscal year. As I said earlier, the reserves have been able to sustain that up until this fiscal year. This is the point where we have to make a decision, otherwise it's going to, start eating into some other funding source. The one at the top is just a combination of both. But I wanted just to show that the street lighting District 2 works. It's the street lighting District 1 that is the one that is problematic. So some options, and understanding that none of these are appealing to anybody, but it's driven by a huge negative when comparing the revenues and the expenditures.
If you elected an option like that, and we were to do that, what you'd be suggesting is that, like, if you had 10 street lights in a row, you'd be, 60% of those would be off and maybe sprinkle them around, so that instead of proper spacing, we would have quite a bit of distance between street lights, which would almost self-defeat the idea of what they were meant for.
We would focus on the intersections and keep those lights on. And then on the runs in between intersections, that's where we would be focusing on the reductions. That's probably the most prudent way of doing it. But you're right, Councilman Rothschild. This would be 6 out of every 10 streetlights would be switched off. I'd just like to point out under the column option 1 budget first year, there is a capital cost to doing that. Edison would charge us $44 for every street light. The effect would be that we would have 3,000 street lights turned off. At $44 each brings us to 133,000. So there's a capital cost, which would still leave us in the negative in that first year of that option. But the second year, as you can see, then that turns into a positive because we wouldn't have the capital cost in the second year. So you would start to realize energy savings and the revenues. We're assuming revenues basically are the same, and the energy costs are about the same, just to have a
Sean, what's the capital cost for turning off a streetlight?
that's the $44.
No, but I mean, what is the capital cost doing that?
They have to disconnect it from their system because the street lights are all automatic in that they have a photocell.
So they'd have to get into the wiring.
They
and
would have to physically go out there, access the handhold on the side of the pole, and disconnect the wiring. Also like to point out that, as I pointed out earlier, the number 2 district does work. So the reduction in the street lights, it would not be fair on the people that enjoy that and pay for that in that district that we start switching off 6 out of every 10 street lights in those districts. They will remain untouched, and I think that's important to note. So the reductions would come in the other areas outside District 2. The second option is another technique of trying to save the energy. There is a way for Edison to time the street lights so that they would come on at dusk, but they would switch off automatically after 6 hours of operation. That represents about a 48% reduction in service level, if you will. The savings are really not there. I mean, we wanted to explore this and let you see the results of that. There's a much higher capital cost than to be able to retrofit each street light at $65. That amounts to $327,000 to do every street light in, and again, this would be outside of the number 2 district. But you can see that even after the first year getting zero capital in the second year, we're still negative by almost $100,000. The third option is the most equitable. And getting to what Councilman Rothschild was talking about earlier, there would be more equity in a citywide district, and understanding that an assessment district is supposed to be for special benefits derived by each property that contributes to the assessment. When you think of a traffic signal or you think of an arterial street, it can be argued that that's more of a general benefit than a special benefit. But the other thing that an assessment district requires, and you know, perhaps bear with me. The special benefit and proportionality, those two items are requirements of an assessment district, and the Prop 218 covers the voting requirements associated with forming an assessment district. But as we pointed out here, the general benefits are supposed to be separated before assessing the special benefit. And that's very important to identify that, and what we had proposed in a citywide, if that's the direction that the City Council wants to go in, is that we would use the ad valorem tax to offset the special benefits. So the ad valorem would be used to cover the traffic signals, to cover the park and rides, to cover the arterial streets, the commercial areas, and then the special benefits are much easily justifiable in the residential areas where the citywide assessment district could cover that. It would mean that we could build in inflation factors to the assessment, but obviously it requires a vote of the people, and the majority vote. The majority protest is what would apply in this case. And we've defined that for you as well, where the majority of the weighted ballots received are in opposition to the proposed assessment. The other thing about the citywide is that we can include commercial, industrial, multi-residential, even vacant properties. I've looked at different assessment districts in other cities, looked at the engineers' reports, and you know, there are a lot of good ideas out there. Certainly that's something that we haven't quite got into yet. The methodology. Having a vacant parcel pay for street lighting, that's something that, you know, has some people scratching their heads, but what we would propose is if that street light, if that vacant parcel is abutting an improved street with a street light, then it would pay 50% of a developed property, and then vacant parcels that would be remote would not have an assessment. Trying to get it as equitable as possible, trying to make sure that it is it covers the costs of operating the system, but along with that goes the pain of people that are today not paying any contribution towards the street lighting, then having an assessment on their property taxes. This is just a representative list of cities that have citywide streetlight assessment districts. I'd like to point out that Yorba Linda's is very interesting in that it is not just street lighting, but their citywide assessment district covers various open space landscaping, covers the traffic signals, covers some park maintenance, and I've read through the engineer's report on that and found it to be very, very useful. If the City Council should go in that direction, I think that's what we would be looking at to mirror the citywide assessment. If Council decides they want to include more than just the street lighting, that is an option. And again, we'd be glad to come back with more information, more detail on the methodology, more evaluation of what a likely assessment would be per equivalent dwelling unit if Council wants to go in that direction. This is basically just a summary then of the three options. And we've just noted the service level there. So the option 1, which turns cash positive after the first year, is only a 40% level of service. The option 2, while at a 52% level of service, never goes positive, with the current projections. And then the third option, obviously the service level would be 100%, but it means we have an extensive level of effort to get to a citywide assessment proposal, and then it would need to go to a vote of the people. That concludes my presentation. I'm sure there will be lots of questions.
City Council, just as a kind of a follow-up to that, what we're looking for tonight is some discussion and give us some sense for which of the options you'd like us to pursue and bring back at a later date. Not looking for a decision that this is or isn't what we're going to do, just simply which road would you like us to spend our time on to do some more study work on this issue.
Well, I think that it would be prudent to at least pursue two options so that the council has the ability to make a decision based upon what staff comes back with on either option 1 or 3. Obviously, this is not something we're voting on here tonight, and I don't think this council's had enough time to fully digest all of this information that's been presented. But option 2 just does not seem viable at all. And I personally would like to see more information on option 1 and 3. I know that this was originally looked at as being a workshop, and then you're squeezing a lot of information in a short period of time here tonight. So I don't know about what the rest of the council's discretion is, but I'd like to see more information on options 1 and 3, and perhaps if it's going to be a much larger discussion, even for us to have a workshop on it.
It looks on the face of it that option 3 would be the most desirable. The results being fair and equitable distribution of the cost, no loss of service level. I mean, however, that would require the voters approving it. The predicament we would be faced with if the voters don't agree that that's the most desirable option is then we would have to pick 1 or 2. I mean, so I'm inclined to think that 3 is certainly the direction we would want to pursue, and then try to figure out what our worst case scenario would be if voters don't approve it. But I agree with Ryan. We need more depth on this, I think.
And I agree. The Prop 218 was very stringent regarding the formation of the districts. In fact, it eliminated many districts, special assessment districts that we had in place. But I agree, we need to look at the establishing the district, and it's up to the voters. And if, like anything else, if you don't have the revenues, then turn off the lights.
Am I right in saying that right now the general fund, because our budget this year is balanced, so the general fund is subsidizing this $600,000 loss this year?
No, at this point, in years past, we've had enough reserves to cover it. This is an item that we had intended to bring up during this fiscal year for this discussion, and based on decisions made at some future workshop and potentially decision of the voters, we would need to address that at that point in time.
I don't like any of the options. I'd like to have option 4, that we find the money within the city. First, we can look at the city manager and what we pay him. The next option could be is that the staff that we gave everybody raises, or we could use maybe, didn't we absorb the RDA staff at about $1 million a year? I think there's money in the city, and I don't think that we need to shut any services down or increase any rates. Although option 3 doesn't include increasing rates, it just means getting people that aren't being charged for their parcels or their property.
Essentially, yes, that's true. That's the certain parcels are paying right now, and certain parcels are not. And
I didn't quite understand why some are not.
It depends on when it was developed. In 2007-8, with the changes in the law, we started requiring all new development to also be a part of the street lighting assessment district. So if your parcel was in between 2 certain time periods, then you have essentially no assessment for streetlights. If you're in the original sort of boundaries of the city, then you're in the original district that, although you're paying something from your 1% of your property taxes, it's not quite enough to cover the bills. And if you're in a lot that was developed after about 2008, then you are almost assured that you are paying into the district at the rates that were mentioned earlier. So there would be no change to those, or potentially a drop in the rate when the entire city, if the entire city elects to be part of a larger district.
Well, my option would be to find the money within the city by cutting other areas, and then option 3 at the last resort.
Yeah, I'm inclined to moving towards this supporting option 3, because it would allow us to expand as we grow into a community that's growing. We'll be doubling in population over the next 15 years. This would be more of a natural transition into that, but I'm inclined to have the fallback position option 2. And the reason for that is that option 1, you make those permanent fixes to adjust for that, then you have an extensive amount of expenses to flip back into that if the future calls for an expanded lighting system. Where option 2, at least, we're just adjusting the time frame, and we're not actually doing the infrastructure repair work. So for me, I'd like us to look at option 3 with option 2 as our fallback.
Staff, do you have clear direction?
I think we can put something together that's a little bit more extensive. We just wanted to bring this item to the council's attention, the public's attention, and start to sort of raise awareness. But certainly we can bring back, I think the key is making sure the council was okay with option 3, even to consider it. There are some parcels that would have a new fee attached to them. There are other parcels whose fee could potentially go down. We have to do that hard work to sort out all the math involved. So it would affect people differently, but in the end result, ultimately the entire city would be paying effectively the same amount for the same level of service.
So when would you expect to bring this back to the council?
Mr. McGlade, any thoughts on when this might come back?
There's an extensive amount of work that needs to be done to explore the assessment district just for the street lighting. I'm not sure if you want it to go any further than that, but certainly it's going to be 30 to 60 days, I would say, to be able to drill down into that and try and get close to some level of cost per parcel, because that's a necessary prerequisite before going to the voters.
With that, I would say probably January.
part of what we have to decide too is whether we think the revenues from this activity should pay for the expenses, or whether it's okay to have the revenues not be enough and let it be subsidized by some other source.
That in fact was the proposal, was that the ad valorem would buy down a huge amount of the cost associated with the citywide district, thereby removing the general benefit as is required by Prop 218. The special benefit then would be what would be assessed on the per parcel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move into public comment. And my first card is Dorothy Miller.
My name's Dorothy Miller, and I'm very pleased that every single one of you has voted in to take care of the city and the people. I feel this is not being done. I feel we have a council member that is not doing what she should be doing. And I feel that there's people running for election now. They need to find out exactly what is going on. They need to go to the planning department meetings. They need to see what's going on so you have a general idea of what this whole thing is about. But we have people that just think that they're going to run the show. They don't work with the other council members, and this is not good. We have to work together if we're going to get anywhere. And if you don't work together, then you might as well forget it, because the city will go down the tubes completely. And if these people that's running, and there's several of them here, and I want them to understand that they need to know what's going on with the city. And this is one of our big major problems. I was at the meeting 2 meetings ago, and somebody just went off like you could not believe. Oh, after I'm done with giving you all this information, I will then answer the question I was asked. You know what? It never got answered. I'll give it to you in writing. Now, wait a minute here. I want everything out in the open, but we're going to give it to him in writing. That is absolutely out of control. We work for the Victorville Water Waste Treatment Plant. We want all the information about Victorville's Water Waste Treatment Plant, and I don't feel that's right. I don't feel she should have anything at all to do with the city of Victorville's Water Waste Treatment Plant. She should step down and do what she should have been doing in the first place. And I hope and pray the people, if any of them get on or whoever gets on, will pay attention to what is really going on in this city. And if things don't go better than what they are now, hey, it's done. The city's done. Because we're getting people now that has no idea what has gone on and what is going on. And I don't think that's very good for us. And we're the ones that vote you guys in. And we need to be protected. And if you can't do it, then hey, step down. And if you keep wanting to do things the way you're doing them, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Because you have to work together, all of you. And that's not just one, that's every one of you have to work together. And that's not good. You need to work together. And it's not happening. And I don't like that at all. And I happen to be a taxpayer too. And I like to know that I have people representing me that's looking out for me and the public. And I don't feel this is being done here. I think somebody is just out of control, and it's just got to stop. That's all there is to it. Thank you.
Frank Atkins.
Hello, City Council. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Atkins. I reside in the city of Victorville, and I'm a candidate on the ballot for the Victorville City Council. Since our last council meeting, I've spent a great deal of my time and energy visiting a lot of the places in Victorville and meeting a lot of the people. I spent time visiting with our current city manager, Mr. Doug Robertson, here at City Hall. Mr. Keith Metzler, I spent time with him at Southern California Logistics Airport, got a nice tour of the facility. Both visits were very informative, and I thank both of the gentlemen for taking the time to see me. I thought it was a very good visits, and like to continue learning more. I also spent a day in our city's Old Town area, received a guided tour by a wonderful, caring lady and volunteer, Ms. Barbara Powers. I was introduced and talked with many of the area business owners, church leaders, and those that reside in the area. There's a lot of work needs to be done. Our city needs to address these issues more. We keep bringing in a bunch of new business and pushing these people aside, which seems to be business as usual. But are you not up there to represent all the people or just your chosen ones? Incumbents. As you know, between now and the next city council meeting, the local daily press on Wednesday, October the 10th, will be featuring a local voter's guide. I recommend all residents get a copy of it. It will list all 14 candidates and their answers to questions concerning themselves and the city of Victorville. Also, last meeting, I said I would offer a suggestion of 3 individual candidates that will make it happen for the people of the city of Victorville. One of the choices is myself, Mr. Frank Atkins. Another choice is Mr. Sean Hubbard, and another choice is Mr. Carlos Pirano. We will be together for a public meet and greet this Saturday, October 6th, at our booth at the city's Spice for Life event. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Martin and Stephanie Vitu.
Good morning, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members, Mr. McLeod. My name is Martin Vitu. I'm here with my wife. We are actually here because we're worried about the health and safety of our family. Just in a nutshell, in our home, within the last 2 years, we've had 3 black water sewage backups into our home. Now, the city has admitted through Joe Flores, a nice man, gentleman, that it is a city's issue and that they would do whatever it takes to make it right. First thing they did was send a Purifers. It's a company they contracted to do the initial cleanup. We found out later on through proof and through an we had an environmental check on our home that Purifers literally did not do the right job. Did not clean and sanitize based on protocol for this kind of cleanups.
And they didn't follow the IICRC S500 national guideline. It's a standard that's a national standard. And
So-
they didn't mitigate.
Would you speak in the microphone when you're...
Yes.
So there you go, thank you.
So basically, and that's proof from this Category 3 Blackwater preliminary assessment report that was sent to the city on October 23, that the baseboards and everything, August 23, sorry, that weren't done properly. So causing our family actually to live, and I don't mean to scare anybody, but we're living in an E. coli infested home right now. And this report will tell you that it is, because it wasn't done right to begin with. So my question is, what is the city doing to ensure our health and safety? Please follow me here. I mean, I'm not the mayor, but I do pay my taxes. And if I were somebody important, I would think that the city, this was August 23rd, the city knowing that there is E. coli in our house because of the botched job.
And the backup occurred on July 2nd.
So what's the city doing to ensure our immediate health? I would think the city would say, okay, let's get your house clean, get the E. coli out, and we'll patch up whatever Purifers missed. Because your health is a concern. The second thing is, what is the city doing to fix the street? The city has admitted that it has to do with the main sewer line on the street. They did do a temporary fix on our sidewalk. They put a couple of outlets that hopefully they said if it backs up again, it'll back up on the street. But bear in mind though, this FYI, the whole street knows about what's happening. I mean, it's impossible to miss the city's work going around our home. So they said, well, if that backs up, if there's only 2 of us here, the next council meeting, there's going to be a whole block of people here demanding that this problem get fixed. Instead of a bandit fix, we want it permanently fixed. So, I mean, we just wanted to bring it to your attention. The city is working on a contractor to complete the work, but as far as the health and well-being of the family, I'm surprised the city hasn't swooped in and said, let's clean the E. coli out, let's do the patch-up job afterwards, because your health and safety is definitely a concern.
Mr. McGlade, we wanted to meet with you as well, and I understand you're a very busy man, and I know all of you are very busy, and we're just one family in the whole city of Victorville. And then it's just is that we've had 3 sewage backups in our home, February 2011. November 2011 last year was when the city came out and marked the street, assessed, they cameraed the lateral from our home to the sewer main and determined the problem was in the sewer main, that there's a dip in the main line in front of our home, and promised to fix it. And it wasn't fixed. And on July 2nd, we had another major flood in our home through the whole kitchen, dining room, downstairs bathroom. It came out of the bathroom. It all over the, it's in the garage, it's in my pantry, it's everywhere. And anyway, this is a major concern for us. We've been working with the Public Works Manager, Mr. Flores. I spoke to him that evening, and he promised me, don't worry, ma'am, we're going to make this right for you. We will fix it as if it never happened. He showed up the next morning to assess the damage. The contractor came in that evening and tore out the walls in our home, and they're still torn out, and it's still not right. And we, anyway, it's been going on for 3 months. And anyway, Mr. Flores came out the next morning, shook both our hands, promised us that it would be corrected, and assured us that the city was going to fix it. And we've been working with him with other contractors. The first contractor did not, as I said, did not properly mitigate the home. So we insisted on meeting with that owner of that company, and we had a meeting with Mr. Flores in our home, and also Mitch Tucker, and Mr. Lanyon of that company. Anyway, our problem is we just want it fixed. We please help us fix our home, and please make sure we don't have another flood in our home, and that our neighborhood is not going to be flooded with sewage because of, I was also told that they didn't anticipate the level of flow down our street, and so they're working on possibly diverting the flow. So whatever you guys can do would be really, really appreciated, and I just want my family's home to be safe, and I want it to be restored. We bought a beautiful brand new home in 2010. It was the model home. We'd like it restored to the way it was prior to the flood. Also, I was referred to last week. Everything was kind of flowing, and we were meeting with the Mr. Flores on a weekly basis to interview new contractors that could possibly do the mitigation and restoration work. He was very cooperative and helpful, and we've been very patient and diligent about working this. And then I was turned over, unbeknownst to me, well, I was notified last week to the risk management department. And then I called Mr. Bouquet to have an introductory conversation with him to just introduce myself. And he was very rude. He was very rude and very disrespectful to me, and was almost accusing me as if it was my fault that the sewage backup had occurred and the damage in my home was my fault. And our house is tested positive for this E. coli bacteria. We have the report. The city did pay for it, and I'm grateful for that. Anyway, I don't know. I'm sorry, but this is just really, really distressful. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to ask
consideration.
that Sean McGlade do meet with the two of you. I understand that you've been trying to meet with him, and so, Sean, if you could at least meet with the two of them and see if there's something we can do to resolve this matter.
I certainly will. The reason it was turned over to Chuck Bouquet was because of the claim. That's the proper process for filing a claim through the city. So, it wasn't really a change of tactic. It was going to be going through his office anyway. But we have been working very closely. I haven't personally met with him, but I certainly have been looking at the cause and the cure to that cause. Joe Flores, the Public Works Manager, has been directly dealing with him on the cleanup. I'll be glad to meet with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGlade. And we'd really like, if it's possible, to have a schedule of what would be done and how soon we could count on that, because it's really difficult to live and not know when there's going to be another flood. I happen to be home for all 3 of those floods, but if I would not have been home, the damage would have been a lot more extensive. I did everything I could to stop it, to mitigate or to stop the damage as much as I could, throwing down every towel I could. And anyway, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Irene Beltran?
Hi, I'm Irene Beltran, and now I'm campaign director for the 40 Days for Life campaign here in Victorville. The campaign takes place from September 26th through November 4th. So far in the past week, nationwide, 51 babies have been saved. 49 states, including Washington, D.C., have participated in the 40 Days for Life campaign. 2,000 individual campaigns have taken place in 440 cities. More than 500,000 individuals participated, prayed, and fast to end abortion. More than 15,000 churches, congregations have participated in the 40 Days for Life campaign. Reports document 6,000 lives have been spared from abortion, and those are just the ones that we know about. 69 abortion workers have quit their jobs since the campaign started. 24 abortion facilities completely shut down following local 40 Days for Life campaigns. Hundreds of women and men have been spared from the tragic effects of abortion, including a lifetime of regrets. I wish 40 Days for Life volunteers were in front of the abortion center that tragic day when I ended the life of my daughter and my terror began. You 5 have the opportunity to defend life. You 5 have the opportunity to put Victorville on the map so the nation can see that Planned Parenthood can bully everywhere else but not our city. If you regret your vote, do something about it. If you voted for life, do something more, or the blood of the innocent will be on your hands. Thank you.
Juan Linares?
Did it again. Council members, I'm here tonight to tell you to your face what two-faced hypocrites you are, with the exception of Ms. Valles. I went through all the documents, all the comments against the Walmart, and Walmart dismissed them because they were not specific. I don't think you even looked at them. Walmart did not present one single comment that was specific on any issue. The slideshow Walmart only showed there was near one school, not 6 schools, a church, senior living daycare center, nothing. You said nothing. Walmart showed a nifty slide of the percent of people that wanted a Walmart, not one actual comment of why they wanted it. You said nothing. Walmart crowed about the 300 jobs with no guarantee that it would be from Victorville or that it would be 300 jobs for 14,000 people, which is about the average of what's unemployed in this area. You said nothing. Walmart claims it would give shoppers a choice. How? The vast majority of people live west of Bear Valley Road towards Food for Less. You said nothing. Every single person that showed up and spoke or wrote against the Walmart mentioned the traffic and location. You said nothing. Yet, after everyone had gone home and only 2 people remained in the chambers, you all voiced your great concern for the people of Victorville and the traffic that would be dumped on Green Tree Boulevard from Apple Valley. The concern was not for Victorville residents, it was for yours. One council member actually was worried about how traffic near the post office backs up, and he knows because he lives there. And then wants to make sure that the city engineer diverts as much traffic as possible to Nisqually. You show no concern for the people on Bear Valley Road. It's just traffic. You also have to deal with it, you said. What hypocrites? You have no problems dumping traffic on Bear Valley Road, but you all don't want traffic to disturb your home or your lifestyle or even your grandeur, your glorious golf course. Then the issue of the comments made by council members against the people of Spring Valley Lake and others, like myself. I found it to be inappropriate, belittling, disgusting, and showed a total disregard for the opinions or concerns of others because they don't belong to the city or vote. Just like Walmart, you gave no specific as to why the location was good for Victorville, just I'm doing it for the city of Victorville. I have no idea where you learn ethics, manners, and integrity, but you must have missed a lot of classes. I was in the military for 23 years. I know one of you was in the military. And if it was I would not have had you in my command. I would never have had you, I would more than likely have had you in jail, and the rest of you, I would have had you tarred and feathered.
Chuck and Pat Hansen.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Chuck Hansen. I live in Apple Valley, and this is my lovely wife, Pat, that helps me out on the bike rides. And we're here to tell you about a fun day, something good happening. Anyway, our ride is October 20th, and this will be the last time we get here to remind you about it. And last time we left some entry forms here, and if you haven't filled out, I'll come by and pick them up while the wife's talking. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I am Pat Hansen. This is our 5th annual Chuck Hansen Tour to Apple Valley. For the first time, we're offering 3 rides, a 50-mile, a 25-mile, and a family 10-mile ride. We have taken this on ourselves. We have created our own 501c3, and we know now all the headaches involved in the planning of this particular event. But we anticipate between 200 and 300 bicyclists. So we would like you to join us. We'd like the city of Victorville to become a part of that. And part of the money that we are going to be getting will be set aside for bike lanes in our community. And so that's our major thrust. This whole high desert area needs to have a safe place for people to ride their bicycles. And even though people in bike lanes have been injured, they do know that there is a space set aside for them. And so they have the right. And bicyclists were here long before cars. And so bicycles do have a place on the roads. And that's what we're trying to encourage. Thank you for your time. And we hope to see you there.
One more comment. Mike Rothschild, you rode with me once, and I can loan your bike again if you wish to go.
Thank you. Barbara Powers.
Like I said before, it was a rather scary proposition riding a $4,000 bike that wasn't mine, but I managed to do it that one time. Thank you.
Evening, council and staff. I'm Barbara Powers with the Old Town Route 66 Ad Hoc Committee, and I want to talk tonight about the building on D Street, which you know as the Transportation Center, and it does say Old Town City of Victorville on it, and it is a very large building. If you haven't been there recently, it has a lot of vacant areas. There's one Greyhound ticket booth, and there are offices there and a cafe area that is not being used. It has been empty for years, and that's what I'm here to talk about this morning. I have a letter that I wrote, and I will be reading it, but I'll give you copies when I'm done. This is to all the Victorville City Council members and city manager. Please notice the genuine interest that the Old Town Route 66 Ad Hoc Committee has about the Transportation Center. We are aware that the similar meetings have been held in the past at the center. They've had, the committees have met there before. And we would like permission again to meet there for our winter hours of 10:30 to 12 noon. There are scheduled security on duty at that time. And this is something that I'm asking you. I don't know the process, and so I'm asking if this should be put on the agenda or what should be the proper procedure for that. And then from there, that's our first question. Then our focus on this transportation center also includes usage regarding the cafe in the future. The 66 Museum has a continuous volume of tourists, up to 10,000 a year. And there is no place for them to have coffee or lunch or any kind of like a little place close. And we would deal with the transportation. We've heard all kinds of excuses why we can't. And we think we can. and it is possible. So I wish you would help us find a way to do this, get something going in the transportation center. It could be used as a catalyst to improve Old Town. It could be used for other meetings, displays, chambers, information, city events, and we just think it's ridiculous that they're empty, virtually empty, every day, and has been for years. Our question is, how do we get this on the agenda? How do we get it started? And we would like to know the proper procedure. And I've sent this letter in as I'm a co-chair with Sharon Foster's signature also. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Perhaps, Mr. Robertson, you could put together a meeting and see.
Yeah, I'd be happy to meet with Mrs. Powers.
Okay.
To talk about that. We'd have to look at, obviously, how it was used previously. I know that it used to house on a monthly basis the Old Town Property Owners Association.
Old Town Property Owners.
There was more activity in the center at that point in time, but certainly something we can look at. So you can just send your letter to me. You're welcome to come to any council meeting as well.
True. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the cards I have under public comment, so we'll move on to the rest of our agenda. Under both the Library Board of Trustees and the Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, there were no items at time of posting. Under the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, written communications, agenda item number 4 is request that SCLAA ratify the acceptance of the FAA AIP grant 03-06-0359-020-2012 in the amount of $1,254,977 for airport development under SCLA.
I don't have,
Yeah, we all are on, or I'm not on the right screen. Oh, there we go.
switch screens.
Everybody's working? You don't have yours? Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis, second by Council Member Rothschild.
Hold on.
Voting. How are you going to vote, Councilmember Kennedy? I can enter it for you. Motion carries unanimously.
Seen that screen before.
Agenda item number 5 is request that SCLAA award a construction contract for ramp rehabilitation Phase 1 project in the amount of $460,226 to Southwest Construction Company, Inc.
Motion by Councilmember Rothschild, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis.
Vote is aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 6 and agenda item number 17 on the City Council agenda are companion items. I will be stepping off the dais as my firm's attorney is also the attorney for Lamar.
And that was, as the mayor indicated, item number 6 also is a companion item to City Council on item 17, and we'll take those concurrently. And this is be a report by our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis. We have a summary. This has been a long evolving settlement arrangement with Lamar Companies, the billboard company. They had leasehold interests and billboards on a number of properties that we were acquiring in connection with the Nisqually Interchange project. We have come to a negotiated settlement that took months and months to put together. Essentially, to bring it down in a nutshell, the settlement provides for Lamar to be able to construct 2 of the new digital-type billboards in replacement of 3 static billboards that they are taking down. And while they had a claim for compensation for the rights of those billboards, the settlement agreement essentially provides that there'll be no compensation provided to them. So it's a settlement agreement that's gone through the city's planning department and through city staff, and we've worked on it for a long period of time, and staff is recommending approval of it.
Before we vote, I do have 2 cards. Norman Miller.
Hi, Norman Miller with the Golden Triangle Ad Hoc Committee, and I was just wondering, is there any possibility, excuse me, one of these billboards could be put down in the Golden Triangle area?
My understanding is that the exact location of the billboards has not been determined yet. Certainly, we believe one of them will be in the Nisqually region, and I believe that we have the option of talking to Lamar about locating the other one, and we can certainly consider that. And I misspoke. Apparently, the planning department did not recommend approval. They've remained neutral on it at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have another card. Michael Davis.
Mayor Pro Tem Cabriales, I was simply here to answer any questions that the council might have.
Any questions from the council?
Did you say that staff is not recommending it? They're staying neutral?
Planning department staff is remaining neutral on it.
Can I ask why?
This issue, the issue of electronification of billboards, is one that's been around for several years. Ultimately, the settlement came about at roughly the same time, and this is not consistent with a proposed ordinance that was being considered at that point in time. So that piece was separated out, and this is now essentially just a settlement to resolve our issues on the land that we needed for La Mesa Nisqually interchange, and effectively allows them to simply move the billboards rather than following our current ordinance, which would mean that they would need to take out additional billboards if they were going to put up electronic billboards.
So this gives them the right to keep billboards?
Yes.
It's replacing static billboards, 3 static billboards with 2 digital billboards.
And so staff doesn't like that because they want everything to be digital?
No,
They want
the discussions, it's not the entire staff. Essentially, this separated out the issue of the ordinance, which planning was working on. So planning hasn't been involved in this discussion. That's why planning is neutral. It's not that they were for it or against it necessarily. They're simply neutral on it. It's not something that went through planning. It went through economic development and engineering as part of the settlement discussions for the land acquisition.
Okay.
Entertain a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Mayor McEachron absent.
Under the Joint Powers Financing Authority, there were no items at time of posting. Victorville Water District, we do have a consent calendar.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries unanimously.
Item number 9, this is a request to approve the additional appropriation and purchase order for payment of the district's remaining portion of the MWA Oro Grande Water Recharge Project in the amount not to exceed $71,400 pursuant to an authorized cost-sharing agreement.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis. Motion carries unanimously.
Under the City Council performing housing functions of the former RDA, there were no items at time of posting. Under the City Council, we do have 2 public hearings. Agenda item number 10 is the public hearing called to hear arguments for and against approving the zone change of PLN 12-00016 for Victory Christian Center, and approve the introduction of ordinance number 2295. Mr. Webb.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members. I think I assured some of you that there would be no more controversial items following the last several meetings. Unfortunately, just prior to this meeting, we received correspondence from Mr. Corey Briggs recommending opposition. I believe you have a letter of opposition before you, as well as a CD with additional data. We have not had the opportunity to respond to that as we have in the past in writing. Therefore, staff requests a continuance of 2 weeks. However, staff has discussed this with the applicant, and the applicant wishes to proceed. And so therefore, it'll be the council choice after public hearing, whether to continue for 2 weeks or to proceed with an action this evening.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on agenda item number 10. I do have Pastor Al Zorn here.
Good evening. I'm Pastor Al Zorn. I also received the letter, and I just wanted to just share with council what actually is currently there. I know they're opposing. Brandon College just recently relocated as of September 15th. And they weren't really considered an assembly, but they probably have a lot more people than we would actually have there. Also, the county rehab was in the building that we're actually taking over, and they probably had more people coming through. So the things that they're saying that should keep us out really has been going on there all along. And so we just are saying that we would like to just have you to approve it so that we can continue on doing what we're doing.
Thank you. I do have another card, Corey Briggs.
Thank you. It sounds as though you got the letter and the exhibits that we sent over today, so I don't need to go through those. Let me just say for the record that my clients aren't opposed to what these fine folks are trying to do. What my clients are opposed to is the city continuing to violate a provision of the general plan that you agreed to settle the lawsuit over your general plan's adequacy. And that's why we're here every week on multiple projects, because you continue to thumb your nose on a very important provision that you accepted. So as soon as you start following your general plan, you won't see us anymore on these issues. But if you keep flouting it, unfortunately, we have to come in here, and we don't like to delay fine folks like this doing something good, but you force us to do it by not honoring the commitment you made to the public a couple years ago. Thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to address the council on agenda item number 10?
I would just like to state upon reading the letter that I find that we are not violating the general plan. That is why I was asking for 2 weeks continuance in order to respond appropriately. I believe this is consistent with the code and with the general plan. And so therefore, again, I would like to respond accordingly in writing.
Mr. Webb, is this not what we have been doing every time we get these letters at the 11th hour prior to a council meeting, that we would naturally continue?
That has been the practice, and that has been the recommendation of outside attorneys, actually, from Dr. Pepper, Walmart, Target, and St. Mary's. There's been a consensus overall that it is most prudent to respond in writing, and therefore I do not want to respond specifically to Mr. Briggs' comments with such short preparation. I'd rather do so officially in writing.
Well, and I don't know about the rest of the council, but I don't have whatever was received. I didn't get that.
The city clerk did receive correspondence along with a disc, and I would concur with Mr. Webb's recommendation to the extent that the city has not fully responded to the comments. It could create some potential liability. I believe that we are in full compliance, but nevertheless, I haven't seen all the arguments, and I think it would be appropriate for staff to respond in writing.
I stand corrected. It's right here, but again, I haven't even had a chance to read the letter, much less look at the CD. I doubt any of the other council members have.
Pastor, you don't need to stand up. This is just going to be a comment. Mr. Briggs has done this on every zone change, every project's come before this council that I can think of. He adds time and cost. He has a legal right to do it, so he does it. I think it will be in your best interest if we continue this, give staff the appropriate time to respond. It'll relieve you of potential problems and liabilities. But I'd like to address another question. I don't know if the city attorney or the planning director is the right person to answer this question. Is there anything in state law, city ordinances, county regulations that says a general plan cannot or should not be changed? That once we make it, it's set in stone and we shouldn't change it no matter what happens?
Actually, just the opposite. It is intended to be changed. It is required to be changed in updates. Certain elements such as housing and transportation are required every 5 years to be updated. All of the other elements must correspond accordingly, so therefore there is some tweaking and they need to be updated also. At the same time, there wouldn't be a process for general plan amendments and zone changes outside of the general plan if that were the case. On top of that, the intended lifespan, if everything goes perfect and you're a mature city and growing slowly, or an immature city and not growing at all, is 15 to 20 year horizon on the general plan itself, max. In our case, as you know, we grew very rapidly and erratically, and we've had to make adjustments along the way, as well as a comprehensive general plan update that we made a few years ago. Again, by state, we will be required to do an update to at least 2 elements, and then the other elements that correspond within only a few years from now, a comprehensive update. But in the meantime, the law allows for general plan updates and zone changes, et cetera, and we are following the process.
Do we need a motion to continue this?
Typically, you do take a motion to continue the item, but you need to close the public hearing first. Or, not close, sorry.
Well, when I
continue
the public hearing,
Yes.
what's the date certain?
October 16th is the next regular meeting.
Okay. And I don't have the option to make the motion here, but I'll make the motion that we continue agenda item number 10 to October 16th, 2012.
Second.
Motion by Mayor McEachron, second by Councilmember Kennedy. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 11, again, a public hearing called to hear arguments for and against approving the general plan amendment and zone change of PLN 12-00018 and adopting resolution 12-058 and adopting the negative declaration and approving introduction of ordinance number 2296. Mr. Webb?
On this item, we received a more extensive letter from Mr. Corey Briggs, as well as additional information. I have called the applicant, Dan Tate, and Dan and the city both recommend continuation for 2 weeks. We're in agreement as co-applicants.
Okay. I do have one card, Corey Briggs.
Since you have the letter and the exhibits, I don't need to go through them in detail. The one thing I would point out, Councilmember Kennedy, 2 things actually. Number one, if the city's so used to seeing all this stuff, it sort of begs the question why your planning staff isn't addressing these issues in the first place. And secondly, you're welcome to amend the general plan. You can do that up to 4 times a year. Actually, you guys are charter, so you can do it more often if you want. My point is, if you take out the key provisions that you agreed to dealing with your greenhouse gases, you're going to end up having to do a far more extensive climate action plan. We compromised on that. Your city attorney was involved, so were your planning folks. So they understand that we did a compromise that worked to everybody's best interests. But if the city wants to make that amendment, you guys are free to do that too, and we'll be happy to work with you in that regard. Thanks.
All right, I have no other cards on agenda item number 11, so I will ask that the council approve a motion to continue this item again to October 16th.
Mayor McEachran, I think the record should reflect Councilwoman Vias. I don't know if you have a concern over the appearance of bias. I don't believe there is a bias, but there certainly is the appearance. And
I asked City Council to give me an opinion on whether or not I was able to vote on this item because I have received campaign contributions from Dan Tate between 2009 and 2010. And why don't you explain?
the receipt of campaign contributions in and of itself does not create a violation of the Political Reform Act or a 1090 violation. However, it could have the appearance of bias, and in order for Council Member Vias to be able to vote, she needs to disclose that she has received those contributions, the amount of those contributions, so it's on the record, and then she can proceed.
And my 460s are with the city clerk for examination. Mr. Tate has, when he gave me those campaign contributions, he has made no requests of me, no strings attached. So I feel that I am not biased in this to vote on.
And ultimately, it is your decision, but that is good for the record.
And although we're continuing this, I would also make it known that he made several campaign contributions to me in 2008 when I ran for City Council for the first time.
Motion to continue made by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis.
What are we voting on? To continue it?
Just
continue the item.
Okay. And we're continuing it because Mr. Briggs filed again?
That is correct, and staff wants the opportunity to respond in
Right.
writing, and I believe the proponent, Mr. Tate, is also in agreement with the continuance.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
On the consent calendar, I'm going to ask that agenda items D 1 through 4 be pulled, as I have conflicts there. Did not vote on those items at the last council meeting. This is the second reading of those ordinances, and I will need to step off the dais. But the rest of the consent calendar, unless any other council member would like to pull an item, is to the council for their approval.
I have a question on the checks. So I'd like to pull check number 712227, Outback, in the amount of $2,600.
Okay, so the rest of the consent calendar.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis.
You pulled the Walmart one?
And St. Mary's.
It's,
But we'll handle yours first as part of agenda item A under consent.
Motion carries unanimously.
Ms. Vi, is your question on that
oh,
check
yes.
number?
Is this Outback Steakhouse, or is this another Outback? It just says Outback.
And I don't have the answer to that question. There's 10 pages of checks. If you'd like, we can get back to the council at a later time as to the exact nature of that expense. I simply don't have that answer.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis.
Are we, I want to vote yes on everything else, but no on the check. So how do I do that?
That's
I
what
can
this
do-
is, with this particular check.
Oh, okay.
Motion carries with Councilmember Vias voting no.
Just for the record, the city hasn't had any event or any business with Outback Steakhouse, so I'm not aware that that is or isn't Outback Steakhouse, but we can certainly provide the backup. Just not something that's typically included in the agenda item. There's 168 checks, I think.
Item D, or 12D4, the presentation of ordinances numbered 2290, 2292, 2293, and 2294. This is for second reading and adoption with the City Council. Or staff report or attorney?
Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis, these are just the second reading. It's required for every ordinance that they be introduced at one meeting, that they be a period of time of at least 5 days between the first and the second reading before they are enacted upon, and they become effective 30 days thereafter. So this is essentially an administrative action whereby the council for a second time does in fact do its second reading. It gives the chance for you to fully consider the impacts of the ordinances.
Okay. The public hearing for this item was conducted 2 weeks ago. We had a lengthy discussion, and we heard testimony from both sides of the issue. I do have some cards. Out of courtesy, I'm going to allow the people that have cards to speak, but I'm going to allow you 1 minute, because we already went through this once before. So as I call your name, you have 1 minute to address the council.
And Mayor Cabrialis, it should be reflected the administrative proceedings and the public hearing has been closed, so this is really comments based on items that are appearing on the agenda.
Are we violating any rules or laws by not allowing them the 3 minutes?
There is no requirement, given that this item has been fully discussed, there's no requirement. It's up to the discretion of the chairman of the city council as to how long he can provide, given the fact that this item has been fully covered.
Would it look better if we gave the people a chance to speak? If any lawsuits came about?
That's up to the discretion of the board. Again, the public hearing item this item has been fully addressed at a public hearing, and in fact, on 2 different occasions. So it's really up to the discretion under the Brown Act as to whether or not, there's a question as to whether or not you even have to provide them a provision or an opportunity to speak on this item. We're doing it under the provisions of the Brown Act where the public's allowed to speak on items that are posted on the agenda.
So what is the point of hearing it again if they don't get their 3 minutes?
Again, we are hearing this under a different provision. The Brown Act provides that any member of the public can comment on items appearing on the agenda. In terms of the public hearing process, that public hearing process, which is a portion and comprises the administrative record, that portion of the item has been completed. Again, here it's just public comment on items appearing on the agenda.
If it was up to me, I think we should give them their 3 minutes.
Well, it's not up to you. It's up to the rest of us here. And I think we had, like I mentioned before, we had a rather lengthy 3 hours of testimony, and I think we covered everything pretty well. So it was the
on the Walmart, which is item D4.
Okay, Mary Gray.
Is it 1 minute or 3? Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members and concerned citizens. I'm asking you to please
Speak into the mic, Mary, please.
I'm asking you to please have the EIR do an impact development report before this is approved on the final zoning change. This was supported by our 1st District County Supervisor, Brad Mitzelfeld, that he stated in a letter to you. It was also posted in the paper on March 16th, 2012, and it stated, I quote from him, "In my opinion, the unmitigated impacts of this project would not be justified as alternative locations exist." And that's my question. It was never brought up, and it was never discussed about the alternative location. In the last meeting, Walmart stated that the public, that they were going to control 100% of the water flow and keep it contained. The question I and the citizens in Spring Valley Lake is, where's this report? I wanted to address something to Mr. Kennedy. His remarks at the end of the meeting addressed to the Spring Valley Lake citizens, Mr. Jim Carr, and the City of Victorville citizens, about that the flooding was due to that we had a wall at the Spring Valley Lake. Well, that wall is there to protect our children when they're playing at the lake, so that they don't run out into the street and get hit by a car. Okay, thank you for the time.
Julia Reed.
I believe that Rudy Cabrialis has a conflict of interest in the Tamarisk Marketplace votes. He and his wife benefited financially from Walmart donations made to the High Desert Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, from which his wife received a commission from Walmart donations. He should not have voted on any of the previous TMP items. He also should not vote to approve Agenda Item 12D4 because of a conflict of interest. In closing, I think you should have recused yourself, Mr. Cabrialis. That would have been the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Berger.
Good evening. I'd like to pretty much repeat what Ms. Reed just said, that I want to thank Mayor McEachran for taking these things off the consent calendar. They certainly should be, because both he and Mr. Councilman Cabrialis have a conflict of interest on this, and they should not be voting on it.
Scott Eckert.
Thank you. I'm also here to ask Mr. Cabrialis to recuse himself from voting on this ordinance because of your continued conflict of interest on this and all TMP-related matters. The DA's letter to you said you voted 3 times since 2003 to donate taxpayer funds of between $10,000 and $20,000 each time to the Hispanic Chamber. Your wife received commissions and you benefited from this. The DA didn't prosecute you for this. More recently, in the TMP matter, it's been pointed out by your own city attorney in a letter to the Fair Political Practices Commission dated September 12th that you once again benefited from donations to the Hispanic Chamber, this time directly from Walmart Corporation in the last 12 months leading up to the TMP vote. Once again, you did not disclose this fact of interest, conflict of interest to the public prior to your vote, and you did not refrain from voting. I'll let the DA decide whether you violated the law again on this. One of the intents of the conflict of interest is to keep elected officials like you from voting on certain matters after receiving financial benefit, in this case Walmart. However, your decision to ignore the DA's previous finding in July that you violated Government Code 1091 and turn right around and do the same thing on Tamarisk Marketplace in September is another slap in the face to the public and the DA. Just for clarity, you should state for the record tonight that you did receive a financial benefit from Walmart donations made to your wife's organization in the 12 months prior to TMP vote on September 18th. Then you should go one step further and refrain from voting on this ordinance tonight.
Time's up. Ramon Serrano. Serrano. DeAndrea Hagan. Oh, hold on. No, that's fine. You're first. Come on. DeAndrea Hagan.
I would just like to express my concerns with the legal actions that have been brought against Mr. Cabrialis and the conflict of interest. There are people who have been fighting this entire project for years. It's been brought to my attention just in the last 10 or 12 months. And the last thing I want to see is the whole thing dragged out further with a legal case that overturns everything, causing everyone to start over. I would much prefer that the City Council decide that they don't want to approve what they've already done and start over without Mr. Cabrialis' vote, so that we know when it's done that it's final and there's no more fighting. Thank you.
Deborah Luft. Deborah Luft. And Michael Luft.
Good evening, City Council. Rudy Cabrialis. I also ask that you abstain from voting. because of your recent history. And the only thing else I'd like to add is thank you, Mrs. Baez, for your support. You're the only one who has the courage to stand up for what we believe. Thank you.
Gil Hubbard.
Good evening, City Council. I would just like to also just say that I support Ms. Baez in your stand, your courage for standing up for what is right against all odds, it seems like, and some of the comments I've heard tonight in regard to your stance on issues. That's their opinion, but I respect you for standing up for what is right. Even though I don't vote in the city of Victorville, I feel that you have the best interests of the people of Victorville and the people of the Victor Valley at your heart. And I think that you use that in making your decisions and taking your stance, and I respect you for it. Thank you.
Corey Briggs. He made a note here that he does not wish to speak, but he's opposed. Is that correct? Yeah. Jill Hubbard.
Hi, I've only been here one other time, and that was like to dissolve the water district, so I really didn't know the rules. And could I have maybe 45 seconds on something I should have talked about at the beginning, and then 1 minute on Tamarask, or no? Is that okay? Okay, so here's my little ideas. Okay, number one, I heard that next to the store that we own at Park Center that there's going to be a marijuana store. And I will be contacting the federal government because I will personally try to stop it because I don't think it's good. And I think if you guys are fearful of a lawsuit, that you at least would do the minimum and say that a marijuana store cannot be open after 5 p.m. Because from other cities, I've heard when they're open to 11 and 12 is the biggest problems, which would be money on your part. Number two, how much will it cost to put all this stuff that you're talking about on a ballot? Because I don't think anything's going to pass this year. We're all broke and poor, and we're not passing anything. I liked your idea of sucking up. People would probably love having less lights. On Ridge Road, we have a brand new light because one stupid 16-year-old kid drove a Porsche 90 miles down that road and killed somebody. I turn left out of that road every day. I wait 30 seconds, I wait no seconds, I wait a minute. Half those red lights aren't even needed. Four is that I do believe you just all need to tighten the belts. I was very sick, so I did not come to the meeting where everybody complained, and I apologize because I'm still sick, but it's not a catchy sick, it's just me. But the problem with Walmart is they should have never put it there. We are a landlocked, and I wasn't here, so maybe other people told you this, but 6 weeks ago or a month ago, we had the red light go out on Ridge Road. When that light went out, we couldn't drive. It was all backed up. Red light, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You guys did not get that red light fixed until Monday night. So if you put it down where the fast foods is, the other location, I can go down, I can go around Nisqually, I can go around Green Tree. Right now,
Can
I'm
you
stuck.
summarize, please? Your time's up.
Okay, summarize up. Okay. So I think it's a terrible place because you trapped us there. We have to go to Main Street or Highway 18. And I also concur with everybody else that Mr. Cabriales, you do have a conflict of interest in the Tamarask Marketplace. Walmart donated the money to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. You did receive money for this, so there is definitely a conflict, and you should not have voted previously, and I hope that you recluse yourself tonight because
up,
it's the
please.
correct thing to do. Thank you.
Ruben
Ms. Bowers.
Jimenez. Raj Dillon.
How you doing, council members? The reason I'm up here today is to speak in regards to Walmart. I'm just wondering if this shouldn't be tabled and put all the way at the back because of the legal ramifications that might be going on with Rudy, city attorney, you know, him voting in regards to the Walmart issue. And I was just wondering, one of the comments he made in the Sunday paper was that somebody wanted to sue him, he said, just to get back in line. Well, who's going to pay for that? Are we going to pay for that for his attorney, or how is that handled? Is the city paying for that? Are we paying for that, for what he has to say? Voting when he shouldn't vote? Doing the things he shouldn't be doing? I don't know about this man. I think he's been here too long. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Josh Dillon. Shirley Dillon. George Chamberlain. Chamberlain. After her.
Hi, good evening. I wrote it out, and I was going to talk more from my heart, but during I have a minute, I'm going to read what I have. Mr. Mayor and council members, good evening. My name is Joyce Chamberlain. I'm a school counselor. I'm a Spring Valley Lake resident, and I'm a candidate for the Victorville Elementary School Board. I, as other concerned citizens, have attended several of the council meetings in regards to the zone change in Spring Valley Lake. My son Miles is a 7th grader at Lakeview Middle School. I'm concerned for his safety as well as the safety for all students, not only at Lakeview, but the other 6 schools that surround the proposed area for this Walmart. When the old Walmart was on Bear Valley Road, as you have heard for several weeks, there has been several incidents, crime incidents, including robbery, shootings, rape, and murder, which results in a lockdown of Walmart and local businesses. Fortunately, there was no schools located within close proximity, not the case at the Spring Valley Lake location. Lockdowns in the school are very detrimental to our student safety as well as their psychological well-being. I urge that Mr. Cabrera's conflict of interest be investigated to confirm his right to vote on this issue. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
You've been served, Rudy.
Mr. Cabrialis, I just served you with a lawsuit concerning your conflict of interest. For the record, let me read the key allegations. At the time that the contract with
You have a
for the
minute,
Walmart-
Mr. Corey Briggs.
You just interrupted me.
Yes.
At the time that the contract with for the Walmart entitlements came before the Victorville Planning Commission for approval, Vicki Cabriales, the wife of Rudy Cabriales, was the executive director of the High District Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In that position, she received a percentage of all membership dues and her sponsorships that the chamber received. One of the chamber's biggest members over the last several years has been Walmart. On Walmart's behalf, both before and after the contract came before the Planning Commission, Ms. Cabriales lobbied Mr. Cabriales to vote in favor of the contract because, among other things, she would ultimately receive a larger paycheck from the chamber, which would also inure to the benefit of Mr. Cabriales. Mr. Cabriales agreed to do so, and in fact, he did so in large part to satisfy his wife's desires. At the time of approval of the contract by the Victorville City Council, Ms. Cabriales was the executive director of the Hispanic Chambers Foundation.
Your time's up.
I encourage you to read Section 11 of the
Thank you.
complaint, Mr. Cabriales.
Call for the vote. We'll call for a recess. We'll reconvene when the noise is gone. Okay, we do have a motion for item D4.
I move for approval.
I have some questions.
On the second reading?
Yeah. Called open session. I'd like to ask the attorney, regarding this lawsuit that was just served on Rudy, since we had other things that were served and we ended up continuing it, wouldn't it be prudent to continue this so that we can check it, investigate it? Because nobody's read the lawsuit.
I understand that, but the ordinance, if you approve it today, still has 30 days before it becomes effective, so we have time to do that.
And I'd just like to tell Rudy that, if you do get sued and you do get a new council that turns over, believe it or not, I'm going to vote no on paying for your legal fees. So you're going to be on your own. And I'd like to say that you better think about it twice, because the attorney that's giving you advice has given us advice, and now we're in big trouble and $500 million in debt because of him. So I would think about it twice and maybe get another attorney.
Angela, and everybody here already explained, I don't have a conflict. And I want you to understand that your vote doesn't mean anything to me. No, I don't have a conflict, and I'm going to vote accordingly. Somebody said, vote responsible. I will, and I'll vote in the best interest of the city of Victorville, period.
So are we against you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild.
Is St. Mary's wrapped up into this same one?
No, it's going to be a different one. We're going to
Are
Is that
you just
true?
voting on 4D then?
4D.
All the second readings.
It'll be, the motion should be for all 4 readings, unless you want to pull one apart. The discussion's been on all 4 second readings.
Wait a minute. Are we voting on D, all 4 items under D?
Who made the motion? And
I made the motion, and I was assuming we were voting on D, which has 4 parts to it.
That's right. Yes,
Yes,
D,
that's
1
what-
through 4.
There's no problems with the hospital.
So this is just the Walmart.
no,
Walmart
this is,
and
No.
St. Mary's.
This is
I
all
don't want to
4
vote.
items.
I want to separate them out because I want to vote no on Walmart.
Well, my motion is to approve D, all 4 parts, and I don't withdraw the motion.
Well, then you'd be forcing me to vote no on St. Mary's.
Well, vote no way.
I would like
vote
I would
whichever
like
way
the
you want
attorney.
it.
These should be separated out.
I can note the no vote separately on
the
that one.
the city clerk can record your no vote on the Walmart one
Part
separately.
of the minutes.
Yes on St. Mary's, no on Walmart.
There are a total of 4 ordinances. So St. Mary's is 1, Walmart is 1. Is your vote yes on every?
Related to St. Mary's.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to clarify, it's on all 4. Motion carries with Mayor McEachran absent.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just to further clarify, actually, number 3 is not St. Mary's. It's scheduled to be a county facility on Palmdale Road. Assuming Councilmember Valles was voting in favor of that one, and just the Walmart vote she was opposed to.
Yes, I want the county building, St. Mary's, and no on Walmart.
All right, agenda item number 13 is a request to authorize the mayor.
E was considered as part of the consent calendar, was it not?
Yes, that's correct.
You've already approved E. You approved the entire consent calendar with the exception of item D.
Okay. Agenda item number 13, request to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 to the waste disposal agreement between the City of Victorville and the County of San Bernardino.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis. Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis, may I have your vote? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item number 14, this is a request to adopt the Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2012-2013 through 2016-2017 and set forth in resolution number 12-059.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Councilmember Valles voting no.
Agenda item number 15, this is a request to, 1, add the 2012 Village Drive Cape Seal Project, Mojave Drive to Puesta del Sol Drive, to the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget in the capital improvement program, and 2, appropriate additional funds in the amount of $77,000 from Measure I Local Fund number 256, and 3, award a contract to Corp Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $229,384.62 for the 2012 Village Drive Cape Seal project.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cabrialis. Motion carries unanimously.
Item number 16, this is a request for council to make alternate appointments to the oversight boards of the former Victorville Redevelopment Agency and the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority, VEDA, as follows. Victorville Redevelopment Agency, 1, Sean McGlade, Director of Public Works, alternate to Doug Robertson, City Manager. 2, Sophie Escobar, Economic Development Administrator, alternate to Keith Metzler, Assistant City Manager. And Victor Valley Economic Development Authority, VEDA, Mr. Sean McGlade, Director of Public Works, alternate to Doug Robertson, City Manager.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Councilmember Rothschild. Motion carries with Councilmember Valles voting no.
Agenda item 17 has already been dealt with. Moving on to agenda item number 18. This is discussion and possible action for council to consider giving direction to staff to proactively enforce ordinance number 1860, aggressive solicitation ordinance.
I've been contacted, and I deal with, everywhere you go, you get approached and people ask you for money. And I wasn't sure at the time when I agendized this if we had a policy here. And I did get it, and I read it, and we do. And it's just not being enforced. But then we received an article from Andre from the LA Times saying that it was a freedom of speech and they have a right unless they're in front of an ATM machine.
Yes, I mean, this is an area of law that you are crossing over into the lines of violating constitutional free speech if an ordinance is too, what I would say, aggressive or too tight. Right now you have a relatively strong ordinance on your books that prohibits aggressive solicitation. It is probably defensible. If you wanted to go further than that, it would almost be the equivalent of a ban on solicitation, and that, as the court case that I think I forwarded to you, has been undermined by the courts and probably cannot withstand a constitutional challenge. You do have, I think, what's an adequate anti-aggressive solicitation one. It becomes a function of how much this body wants to enforce it. Your other option is to try and tighten it even more, but then it's going to approach looking like a ban, and that's probably going to not withstand constitutional challenge.
Let me ask you, I mean, let's say I'm putting gas in the car and they're coming up and asking for money, or I'm going into a store and they're asking for money. Is that aggressive?
That's probably starting to get aggressive, and I think I'd have to go through again the specific terms of the ordinance to see, and this was put on the agenda to consider what, or get staff direction as to what you wanted to do. I think you have enough protections. That's probably deemed aggressive, and you could probably enforce that.
And when I went on a ride-along with the Victorville PD, I had an officer that actually got a young man that was begging. And it turned out he had a warrant, so he searched his person, and he found all of this money. And the guy said that he had been standing out there for a couple hours, and he had a wife and kids on welfare at home. And it infuriates me that we have to put up with this. But I know that we have limited law enforcement. Is something code enforcement wise can do something? It just seems like it's getting out of control.
Yeah, unfortunately, the code enforcement would get involved before it's deemed a criminal activity. By nature of this aggressive solicitation ordinance, once the solicitation gets to that point that it's deemed aggressive, it then becomes criminal in nature, and it's actually something the sheriff's office would have to deal with.
Okay, and then when I spoke to the officer, and maybe Captain Yoder can explain this, when I spoke to the officer, he said that the problem with arresting someone for panhandling is that there has to be a victim. So somebody has to call the police department and complain that, you know, by the time the cops get there, the guy is usually gone. Is that correct? Uh-huh.
And report back to you.
Okay, that would be great. But I would also like to tell the people that we do have a rescue mission here in Victorville. And if you insist on giving these people money, give it to the rescue mission, because they're going to make sure that the money is going to where it should be going, and that's to food, shelter, and clothing. When you're giving to these people, you're just either supporting a very bad habit, or you're just supplementing an already income that they have. And you're also keeping them on the streets and making Victorville a more unpleasant place to be. So I would ask that, you know, you stop giving them money. You know, I know a lot of people get angry at me because I'm an elected official, and why aren't you cleaning up Victorville? Why aren't you doing anything about it? But the people have to understand that they're part of the problem, and I'm one person, and we can only do so much. And you need to think about that, and you also need to call the police and continue to call the police when people are there. And I know I'm guilty of not doing that. I just ignore them, and I'm going to start doing it.
Else from other council members?
Just that Captain Yoder was going to get back to us on a report.
Okay, yeah. If you could do that, Captain Yoder. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 19. This is council committee reports. Ms. Fias, I'll start with you.
Yes. VVTA is now providing service to San Bernardino, medical service to San Bernardino, to hospitals down there, and it started yesterday. And it operates only on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And here's a flyer, and I'll leave it with Carol Lee if anybody wants a copy of it, with the schedule and where they drop off. And then also, if you'd like to find out more information about it, you can go to vvta.org.
The only thing I would bring up with respect to Sandbag is there's a lot going on. We've got the DeVore interchange project, which continues to move forward, and would look to possibly go to construction this next year. Massive reconstruction of that interchange, and so as that continues to move forward, I will advise the council. As well, I've asked the Sandbag Mountain Desert Committee to consider the earmarks that we voted to move over to the Green Tree extension at the last meeting, that they be considered to buy down the total cost of the project and not just go to all public share. That will go through the process at Mountain Desert and ultimately at the Sandbag board level. All right, moving on to agenda item number 20. This is discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming city council agenda. Mr. Rothschild?
I have none.
Kennedy?
Nothing.
Gary Ellis? No. Okay, and I have nothing as well. Agenda item number 21, and this is a report from staff and council members. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to once again thank our sponsors for the city's 50th anniversary celebration. Everyone who attended paid for their meals, and ultimately the sponsors' contributions enabled us to pay for the video that was shown. That video, we're in the process of getting it up on our website now so that anyone who couldn't make it to the dinner is able to view it. And just want to thank the sponsors. Interestingly, there's been some comments about, why did we do a dinner instead of some kind of a larger city party? And I don't want to steal any of Rudy's thunder. I'm sure Rudy will talk about the Spice of Life celebration coming up this weekend. But actually, Spice of Life started with the city's 40th, and ultimately it's been an annual event. So that Spice of Life is also a celebration of the city's birthday, the city's anniversary each year.
I would just like to say thank you to Ro Ratcliffe. She is my TAC member for VVTA. I would just like to tell everybody what a great employee she is. She's amazing. Anytime we get a complaint, even just before my meetings, she goes over everything on the agenda. If we get huge packets, she makes sure I understand every little thing on it and what's important. And she's always there. She never misses a time to be there before my meetings to prep me. And then when we started getting a lot of complaints where the buses were so full with people that they were leaving people at the bus stops, what did she do? She actually got on the bus and started riding these routes that were full. And I just wanted to thank her, and she gave me a full report back and let me know that there is a big problem and we do need to restructure our bus lines and our schedules. I just want to say thank you, and I don't know who her boss is, but she's doing a great job.
Mr. Glade is her boss, ultimately, and then, of course, myself. And I've commented before that she is definitely one of our best employees. We're lucky to have her here.
Just a reminder, we do have Spice of Life. It's our 11th annual Spice of Life. Once again, this is a city event. It was sponsored by the city. But all the monies that are generated through sponsorships. So we don't go into the general fund or anything like that, as many people may believe. That's not true. We do use city forces because it is on city property here, but our sponsors are the ones that carry the load as far as the financial on it, and we're doing pretty good this year.
Rocha?
Yeah, I have a comment. This is an issue that's I first raised with the council 2.5 months ago. I think we're finally coming to a conclusion. I just want to bring everybody up to date on where we are with this. At my request, the council, actually, I just wanted an answer in a meeting, but the council has received a written response from Councilmember Valles dealing with the questions I raised about her statements in the Daily Press article on July 9th. The article was written by Brooke Edwards, was titled, "Council Members React to the Grand Jury Report." All of us on the council were sent a series of written questions, and we were asked by Brooke to provide written responses. As I recall, we had a day or two to write and email those responses to Brooke. In answering one of the questions, Councilmember Valles stated that, and I'm quoting directly from this article, VB2, under the leadership of former city manager John Roberts and Mayor Terry Caldwell, was originally budgeted at $700 million, but the final cost was over $1 billion. I asked her to explain why she would make such a statement. In her written response to the council that we received 2 weeks ago, she completely ignored my question. She deflected the discussion with comments about VV2 estimated costs. And she dodged my question about using the term final costs. But it's important that in her statement to the Daily Press, she didn't say that the estimated costs were over $1 billion. I expect she didn't say that because she knew nobody would care about estimated costs on a project that was never built. She said the final costs were over $1 billion, giving the clear impression that the city actually spent that much money. That's what she said, and that's what the Daily Press printed. Remember, she made the statement in a written document submitted for publication. It wasn't a slip of the tongue in an oral interview. It wasn't a mistake. It was a consciously written, intentionally submitted response to the Daily Press. And she knew then, as she knows now, that this statement was absolutely false. What troubles me the most, and what should trouble all of us, is that she refuses to acknowledge that she even made this statement. She refuses to acknowledge that her statement was wrong, and she refuses to explain to any of us why she would make such a statement. Now, I have to say that she did raise two important questions in her memo about writing off the costs of EV2 and about her idea of a loss on the wastewater treatment plant. Now, these are somewhat technical accounting issues, and she's not trained to understand these, and I understand that. So I'll be happy to deal with both of those topics in my comment section in the next council meeting. I would also like to ask that her memo to the council be made part of the public record so that everyone can read it.
My understanding was when you do it to all the council members, it becomes public, according to Ryan.
It is public.
And I have another memo responding to you with more questions submitted for public.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Doug spoke about with respect to our 50th celebration. It was a good event, very well put together. Although Monica's not here tonight, I believe that she deserves many accolades for putting on such a great event, and due to no short part, our sponsors, even my own firm decided to sponsor the event because I did not want the perception of our taxpayer dollars going to pay for such an event, although, you know, turning 50 is a big deal. So I think we had, it was a nice event, and it just it allowed us to look back at the history of the city of Victorville and where we've come from, where we're at today, and where we're going to go into the future. So I'm looking forward to that, and with that, we are adjourned.